Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's afternoon Bible study and devotional. Today we're going to be reading through Daniel chapter 11. So I invite you to grab your Bibles and read along with me as we read through Daniel chapter 11. If you don't have a physical Bible and you'd like one, I'd love to hook you up with one. So send me a private message and I'd love to get this to you. But BibleGateway.com or the Bible app, two fantastic resources to read along with me and to read on your own. And I'm reading out of the New Living Translation, or the NLT. So as you're setting that up, you're finding the spot, you're opening up the app or whatever, and you're tuning in to Daniel chapter 11. I want to take a second to reflect on what we read yesterday in chapter 10. In chapter 10, there was this vision and this description of Jesus that was kind of crazy, but it foreshadows to Revelations, where it like plainly says like, yo, this is Jesus. His body looked like a precious gem, his face shone like lightning, and his eyes flamed like torches. His arms and feet were like bronzed silver, and his voice roared like a vast multitude of people, which is a callback to Revelations 1. And then it leads into like, hey, I'm going to tell you these things. I'm going to explain this vision. I'm going to give you this vision. And it's about the future. So that part is plainly laid out, except yesterday there wasn't really a talk about what that vision was, but there was this thing where, he touched him and gave him a voice. He touched him and gave him strength, because God is really the root of our strength, right? And then he also talked a little bit about the Book of Truth. And that leads us into chapter 11, Kings of the South and North. I'm not 100% sure if this is explaining that vision. It's been a while since I've gone through Daniel. I usually stop short at the Lion's Den, which isn't necessarily great, and why it's good to kind of go through the entire book and capture that whole vision. And there are a lot of things in here that foreshadow towards Revelation. So, if you have bigger questions about some of this stuff, you can go read Revelations. I read that a little while ago. You can find it on the YouTube channel very easily. But for now, we're focusing on chapter 11. So, Kings of the South and North, Daniel chapter 11. Now, then, I was revealed the truth to you. 3 more Persian kings will reign, to be succeeded by a fourth, a far richer than any others. He will use his wealth to stir up everyone and fight against the kingdom of Greece. Then a mighty king will rise to power, who will rule with great authority and accomplish everything he sets out to do. But at the height of his power, his kingdom will be broken apart and divided into 4 parts. It will not be ruled by the king's descendants, nor will the kingdom hold the authority it once had, for his empire will be uprooted and given to others. The king of the south will increase in power, but one of his own officials will become more powerful than he, and will rule his kingdom with great strength. Some years later, an alliance will be formed between the king of the north and the king of the south. The daughter of the king of the south will be given in marriage to the king of the north to secure the alliance. But she will lose her influence over him, and so will her father. She will be abandoned along with her supporters. But when one of her relatives becomes king of the south, he will rise an army and enter the fortress of the king of the north and defeat him. When he returns to Egypt, he will carry back their idols with him, along with the priceless articles of gold and silver. For some years afterward, he will leave the king of the north alone. Later, the king of the north will be invaded by the realm of the king of the south, but will soon return to his own land. However, the sons of the king of the north will assemble a mighty army that will advance like a flood, carrying the battle as far as the enemy's fortress. Then, in a rage, the king of the south will rally against the vast forces assembled by the king of the north and will defeat them. After the enemy is swept away, the king of the south will be filled with pride and will execute many thousands of his enemies by his success. But his success, will be short-lived. Verse 13. A few years later, the king of the north will return with a fully equipped army far greater than before. At that time, there will be a general uprising against the king of the south. Violent men among your people will join them in fulfillment of this vision, but they will not succeed. The king of the north will come and lay siege to a fortified city and capture it. The best troops of the south will not be able to stand in the face of the onslaught. The king of the north will march onward unopposed. No one will be able to stop him. He will pause in the glorious land of Israel, intent on destroying it. He will make plans to come with the might of his entire kingdom, and will form an alliance with the king of the south. He will give him a daughter in marriage in order to overthrow the kingdom from within. But his plan will fail. After this, he will turn his attention to the coastland and conquer the many cities. But a commander from another land will put an end to his insolence and cause him to retreat in shame. He will take refuge in his own fortress, but will stumble and fall and be seen no more. His successor will send out a tax collector to maintain the royal splendor. But after a very brief reign, he will die, though not from anger or in battle. The next to come to power will be a despicable man who is not in the line for royal succession. He will slip in when least expected and take over the kingdom by flattery and intrigue. Before him, great armies will be swept away, including a covenant prince. Verse 23. With deceitful promises, he will make various alliances. He will become strong despite having only a handful of followers. Without warning, he will enter the richest area of the land. Then he will distribute among his followers the plunder and wealth of the rich, something his predecessors had never done. He will plot to overthrow the strongholds, but this will last only a short while. Verse 25. Then he will stir up his courage and rise a great army against the king of the south. The king of the south will go to battle with a mighty army, but to no avail, for there will be plots against him. His own household will cause his downfall. His army will be swept away, and many will be killed, seeking nothing but each other's harm. These kings will plot against each other at the conference table, attempting to deceive each other, but it will make no difference, for the end will come at the appointed time. The king of the north will then return home with great riches. On the way, he will set himself against the people of a holy covenant, doing much damage before continuing his journey. Then, at the appointed time, he will once again invade the south, but this time, the result will be different. For warships from the western coastlands, will scare him off, and he will withdraw and return home. But he will vent his anger against the people of the Holy Covenant and reward those who forsake the covenant. His army will take over the temple fortress, pollute the sanctuary, and stop the daily sacrifices set up in the sacrilegious object, that causes desecration. I'm saying that word wrong. The sacrilegious object that causes desecration. To disgrace something. Desecration. I'm saying it slightly off and it's bugging me. I'm sorry about that. Verse 32. He will flatter and win over those who have violated the covenant. But the people who know their God will be strong and resist. Wise leaders will give instruction. Too many, but these teachers will die by fire and sword, or they will be jailed and robbed. During these persecutions, little help will arrive, and many will join them. And many who join them will not be sincere. And some of these wise will fall victim to persecution. In this way, they will be refined and cleansed and made pure until the time of the end, for the appointed time is still to come. The king will do as he pleases, exalting himself and claiming to be greater than every other god, even blaspheming the God of gods. He will succeed, but only until the time of wrath is completed. For what he has determined will surely take place. He will have no respect for the gods of his ancestors, or for the God loved by women, or for any other god. For he will boast that he is greater than them all. Instead of these, he will worship the God of the fortresses, a god of his ancestors that his ancestors never knew, and lavish on him gold, silver, and precious stones, and expensive gifts, claiming this foreign god's help. He will attack the strongest fortresses. He will honor those who submit to him. So, turning the page, appointing them to positions of authority and dividing the land among them as their reward. Then at that time of the end, the king of the south will attack the king of the north. The king of the north will storm out with chariots and charioteers and a vast navy. He will invade various lands, sweeping through them like a flood. He will enter the glorious land of Israel, and many nations will fall, but Moab, Edom, and the best part of Ammon will escape. He will conquer many countries, and even Egypt will not escape. He will gain control over the gold, silver, and treasures of Egypt, and the Libyans and the Ethiopians will be his servants. But the news from the east and the north will alarm him, and he will set out in great anger to destroy and obliterate many. He will stop between the glorious holy mountain and the sea, will pinch his royal tents. But while he is there, his time will suddenly run out, and no one will help him. May God add a blessing to the reading of Daniel chapter 11. I don't really get it. There is a lot in this. I feel like this is something that could be studied, especially if they're at history and in today's day and age. There's a lot of things in this. I'm left with questions like, why did this have to be revealed to Daniel? Why did this get recorded? Visions of the future are tricky. In this, there was a couple things that stood out to make it feel like it's more of our time that he's talking about, i.e. the kingdom will be divided and the rulers won't be the descendants anymore, kind of talking about how now we vote in political leaders. It's not about family lineage and stuff. That kind of made it feel like it was a bit more of our time. There are many leaders who do not respect other gods and see themselves as greater. Looking at, Putin, looking at, sorry to say this, but like Trump. There's a lot of leaders that, are putting themselves out there and disrespecting gods and saying, other things, although Trump hasn't said that he is better. His followers have said that he's better. And there are some people that have done that. But I should not project that he has said that. He hasn't, to my knowledge. Anyways. So you have some of this stuff going on. Is it political? Maybe. As I've been reading this and thinking about the future visions and stuff like that, I have thought to what's happening in Russia, what's happening in Israel, what's happening in the States. My mind has drifted there, and oh man, have I been able to fill in a lot of gaps plugging that stuff in. And it's been kind of scary. But then I've also been able to plug in a couple other things. Like, just imagine when Hitler was rising to power. You could have filled a lot of gaps with this. Imagine when, Mussolini was rising to power. You could have filled a lot of gaps with this. Throughout history, things like this have happened. They are warning signs about a time to come. And during this time, these wars were really big. I even was thinking about, just the northern and southern kingdoms throughout the Old Testament, because I'm like, wait, when did this take place again? They were occupied. When they went back, there was the northern and southern kingdom divide. Is it talking about some of this stuff? Because King Jeroboam II and Jehoiakim, these kings have been absolutely awful. I'm like, what future is this talking about? Is this our time? Is this their time? Is this where is this? Is this leading to Jesus? Is this after Jesus? Is this before Jesus? My mind, as I'm kind of navigating all of this, has been all over the place, trying to place it in time. And it's one of the reasons why I get lost. Why is this being told? And I think there's a couple of reasons that have come out to me, and they've stepped out to me while doing this. I'm reminded of a Bible verse that says, God has appointed everyone who's in authority. And our role isn't to overthrow them, but to pray for them. Don't know why that happens. Don't know why God does it, how he's doing it, and why he gives the power and authority to so many wicked people. And here on earth, we can see that as a reward for the good deeds. Well, they must be good, therefore they're getting these things. And yet we see God take them down and call them out. Time and time and time and time and time and time and time again. We see God call out these evil leaders, but also put them in these positions of power. And we have a tendency sometimes to think that these people in positions of power must have favor with God. But there's so much manipulation, so much deceit, so much dishonesty amongst those that are getting called out. And a lot of these leaders are not godly leaders. A lot of them are actually against God. But we have a tendency to look at them in that way and let them influence our walk with God. So one of the things is, I think, that reminder that we got to stop looking at our worldly leaders and look towards Jesus. That's one of the big things that comes out of here. But I found myself asking that question the most around verse 33, 34, and 35. So I'm going to reread that part as I'm processing it. Wise leaders will give instructions to many, but these teachers will die by fire and by sword. So, wise leaders who are telling the truth about God, leading people towards God, the truth of God, are going to die by fire and by sword. That's pretty scary. And I've seen it happen throughout history, and it's happened in my lifetime. I know people that have escaped with their lives after proclaiming Jesus, even in this country. Or they will be jailed and robbed. During these persecutions, little help will arrive, and many who join them will not be sincere. That's so devastating. Here you have these wise people leading in good ways, and yet they're getting jailed, they're getting robbed, they're getting killed by fire, they're getting killed by the sword. And then many people who end up following them aren't sincerely following. So the little help that they feel like they have made, they haven't. This is such a hopeless situation. And some of the wise will fall victim to persecution. This feels like such a hopeless thing, and people that are following God well are going to be doing this, falling to a victim in this way. And he's saying this to Daniel. Daniel, who has been ripped from his home, given a new name, and forced to live out these new customs that are completely alien to him. Someone who knows what this is like firsthand, that has been, thrown into a lion's den to be ripped apart by hungry lions, whose friends were thrown into the fiery furnace. These are persecutions that he has seen firsthand, that have been jailed and robbed. And then a bunch of other people scheming to go between, acting like his friends, but then really setting him up to die. Being betrayed by those close to him. This is who God is talking to. Someone that's experienced that and being like, this will happen again in the future. It will happen likely to you in your lifetime. It'll happen to us, and we will see it and hear rumors of it. We don't know why. Recently, we read through the book of Job, and so many people were trying to be like, well, your sin caused this. Here is proof that your sin does not cause bad things to happen. The wise will do it. Look at everything that's been going on with Daniel. Daniel, in his actions, even saving a lot of the people that were likely persecuting him at this time. And then the last part here. In this way, they will be refined and cleansed and made pure until the end of time. For the appointed time is still to come. In this way, they will be refined and cleansed and made pure until the end of time. For the appointed time is still to come. That's really the only glimpse we have on why God allows this to happen here. It's challenging. And when bad things happen, it's so easy to be like, what did I do wrong? Or when good things happen, am I doing this right? I have been guilty of that. When I do something and I'm like, ooh, I don't know if this is right or not. And then good things happen, and then I go, oh, well, it must be right then. As I was, balancing it, and then I might go and do it again, or I might go about it, this way, and then good things start happening again, and then I'm like, it must be good. And I just start justifying, like, even the wrong motives for things. Like this video here, I might, do it for prideful reasons sometimes. I might be like, ooh, I got 200 views. Ooh, that 200 people look at how God is using me. I have to do this right. And it becomes about me and not about God. It becomes about me and not about us, not about you, not about, bringing God out there and getting deeper with in the Bible for myself, or helping you get deeper in the Bible. It becomes about like lifting up my ego at times. That's not good. And there have been times where I've been like, "Hey, look at this," and then things get better. In ministry, I I I struggle with telling people that I have to like fundraise in order to get paid. And then, you can start telling these stories and it becomes like, I did this. I did this. And then, sometimes people will open up their wallets and it becomes like, oh, look at what I'm doing. Look at what I'm doing. And it becomes less about God, less about the ministry, less about bringing people to God or inspiring people with the simplicity of sharing the gospel. And it becomes, aren't I special? And there is this constant tension with how I do things. And I try to aim away from that aren't I special, but every once in a while it does sneak in. And it can be challenging. It can be hard. But I am also, hopefully this fits. There have been times when I have been told, retract my statement about God, retract that, or I'm going to stop sponsoring you. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to. I'm going to stand on truth. And if it is uncomfortable to you, I am sorry. But when I look at the Bible, when I read the Bible, this is what I'm getting. And yes, it might be different than you. At the end of the day, I'm still pointing people towards Jesus. And if you want to be a part of that, awesome. If not, because of this little difference, then I'm sorry. But I'm not going to change, what God says to please you. And I lost money. Now, I felt like that was persecution. But that wasn't being, threatened by fire or sword or jailed or robbed. It hurt my bank account for a while. And then God stepped up and filled that gap. But that felt like persecution. But nothing like what Daniel had to go through. Yeah. And I'm obviously talking about things that I normally don't talk about on here. As I'm still racking my brain around this. Because that paragraph is sad to me. And it's challenging. And where's the hope in it? The hope is that we will be refined and cleansed until the end of time. That we will be rooted well in God and be able to withstand any storm. And those that do die by fire and by sword, or, they have their insurances in heaven. That eternity with God. They have that. People that have died for standing up for God have that eternity. They are heaven bound. They are homeward bound. They are heaven bound. It sucks and it hurts. But at the end of the day, with all of this awful stuff happening, we can be assured and we can rest assured that God is in control. He is doing things in a way that we would not understand, that we would never do ourselves. But He is in control. There's this one last thing, this imagery that came up a couple times throughout it, and it was like these armies were like a flood. Like a flood. This army of people trying to destroy other people were like a flood. And it's interesting. I like that wording a lot. So the flood, also a metaphor in the Bible, is chaotic waters. So life is like the chaotic waters. And a flood is like those chaotic waters coming up onto solid ground, ripping apart things on the solid ground. Jesus is our cornerstone. The wave comes up and it wrecks everything on that solid rock, and then it finally retreats back into the ocean. and the rock is still there. The things on top need to be rebuilt, but the rock is still there. No matter what chaotic waters, no matter what chaos is going on in your life, Jesus is still there. He is still the foundation. Even when something as chaotic and powerful as a flood, Jesus is still there. And he is with them as they rebuild. Right? He is still in control. And when Jesus, goes and asks the apostle to get out and to walk on the water, he's doing it until he notices the giant waves coming at him like a flood in the middle of the water. And then he begins to drown. So as these waves of enemies, whatever they may be, whether it's metaphorical floods, metaphorical armies coming like a flood, or just a string of really bad things going on, keep your eyes on Jesus. And you know what? In today's day and age, it could be a big wave of really good things going on. Keep your eyes on Jesus. Let us pray. AJC, awesome Jesus Christ. There's wars and rumors of wars, and reading this, it felt like a future just full of war, full of pain, full of hardship. And then to read, the section at verse 33, it just felt so hopeless. Those that are doing right are getting killed, they're getting robbed, they're getting jailed. And people that start following them are insincere. Like, it just feels so hopeless. What is the point? It feels like that. And it can feel like that in our own lives. What's the point? Where's the hope? We'll be refined and cleansed until the end of time. Lord, I'm afraid to ask you to cleanse us. I'm afraid to ask you to refine us because it sounds so painful. And it feels like when those things happen that we will feel far away from you. Yet we can remember this story. We can remember Job. We can remember you, Lord. And yes, these troubling times come. These evil rulers rise up, and you let them have this power and authority for whatever reason you do. But you do. And we can't see how you're working. But through this chapter and so many more, we know that you are. So Lord, help us to take our eyes off of these political battles and powers. Help us to take our eyes off of the chaotic waters. Help us to take our eyes off the flood and to focus on you, Lord. And help us to act justly, loving mercy, and walking humbly with you, Lord. Even when it seems like the wrong thing to do. Even when people don't want to see it. Help us to act justly, walk humbly, and love mercy. In Jesus' name. Amen. All right. Thank you guys very much. We have one chapter left, and then I did put a little poll up on my last thing. I can do a poll on the live stream, so maybe I'll do that tomorrow. I'll set up the poll, and you guys can vote on the next chapter, the next book that we will read, as we are nearing the end. We have like 6 books of the Bible left. So yeah, I look forward to tomorrow and finishing off the book of Daniel. But for now, have a great day. God bless.